It started like any other red-eye flight. A Boeing 777 quietly taxiing toward the runway, its engines humming with confidence as it prepared to lift 239 people into the night sky. For most, it was just another routine journey, Kuala Lumpur to Beijing, 6 hours, 1 sleep, 1 arrival. But within an hour of takeoff, that plane became a ghost. No crash, no distress signal, just silence. And in that silence, a terror grew that would grip the world for over a decade. MH370 didn't just vanish. It was erased, methodically, deliberately, as if someone didn't want us to ever find out what truly happened. And now, a single message, long buried in digital dust, has resurfaced. A final, fragmented cry from one of the passengers on board. A message that doesn't just speak of fear or confusion, but of knowledge, of awareness, and of something far more sinister than we ever imagined. Because this message doesn't offer closure. It confirms what we all feared from the beginning, that MH370 wasn't just lost, it was taken. At 12:41 a.m. on March 8, 2014, Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 lifted off into the night sky from Kuala Lumpur International Airport, bound for Beijing. There was no indication that anything was wrong. Weather conditions were smooth, the crew was experienced, and the passengers from all walks of life and 14 different nations settled in for the journey. The flight progressed normally for the first 38 minutes. Then, at 1:19 a.m., the final voice transmission was received by Malaysian Air Traffic Control. "Good night, Malaysian 370. It sounded calm, routine. But just 2 minutes later, the aircraft's transponder, the electronic beacon that identifies and transmits its position, was manually turned off. Malaysia Airlines flight 370 disappeared from civilian radar. That simple act marked the beginning of a disappearance so calculated, it has defied explanation for over a decade. Military radar would later show something even more disturbing. After losing contact, the plane turned sharply west, deviating completely from its planned route. It then followed an erratic flight path across the Malay Peninsula and into the Andaman Sea. For 7 more hours, it flew in silence. No radio, no squawk code, just a ghost in the sky. And when the final satellite handshake came, a faint digital pulse from somewhere over the Indian Ocean, MH370 was gone. Not destroyed, not found, simply gone. For years, the case of MH370 remained locked in layers of speculation, conspiracy, and international frustration. But in 2023, a forgotten piece of data re-emerged. A single compressed satellite signal, logged in an obscure database and dismissed as irrelevant. Initially labeled as corrupted noise, it had gone unnoticed by official investigations. But when independent digital forensics experts applied new decryption tools to the data stream, what they found sent chills through the aviation world. It wasn't noise. It was a text burst, a compressed emergency transmission believed to have originated from a mobile device on board the aircraft. And the message, once decoded, was as brief as it was devastating. "They've changed our route. We're not going to Beijing. Something is wrong. Please pray." The metadata revealed the message was sent long after the aircraft had gone dark. Its timestamp placed it nearly an hour after the transponder was disabled, during the time MH370 was still airborne and maneuvering over the Andaman Sea. Analysts confirmed the signal bounced off an Inmarsat satellite, the same satellite that tracked the plane's final pings. But how was a message sent with no onboard Wi-Fi, no active phone network, and no communications? That question in itself shook investigators. The only answer? The phone had somehow connected to a low-Earth satellite window, a narrow moment where signal paths aligned perfectly, allowing a message to slip through. And that message wasn't just a goodbye, it was a confirmation. Someone on board realized something was terribly wrong, and they tried in vain to let the outside world know. The phone number used to send the message was traced to a passenger listed as ZH, seated in the rear of the plane. A man in his 30s, a mid-level IT technician from Kuala Lumpur traveling alone. But when journalists and investigators began digging into his identity, the trail went cold. There was no online presence, no work history, no family contacts. His address led to a vacant apartment, And the number used to register his mobile SIM? Purchased in cash from a vendor that had no functioning security cameras at the time. It was as if he had been inserted into the flight, a ghost among civilians. Some speculated he was an intelligence asset. Others said he was a whistleblower on the run. But all agreed on one thing. Whoever he was, he knew something. And he may have realized too late that his presence aboard MH370 was no accident. His final act, that compressed transmission, might have been his only chance to alert the outside world. And whoever he was trying to reach, it clearly wasn't Malaysian Airlines. Alongside the message, buried within the compression code, were geolocation tags, barely detectable and believed at first to be data noise. But when plotted, those coordinates didn't point to the South China Sea, where the plane was last seen on radar. They pointed south, far south, to a location in the Indian Ocean hundreds of miles off course. A dead zone, no islands, no shipping lanes, just water. What's more chilling? The coordinates align closely with the acoustic anomalies detected by underwater microphones on the night of March 8th. Signals captured by military hydrophones typically used to detect nuclear submarine activity. Those hydrophones recorded a loud, deep, resonant impact in the region, minutes after MH370's final satellite ping. These two independent data points, the secret coordinates and the acoustic signature, match, and they suggest that whatever happened to the flight, it didn't end in a crash caused by fuel exhaustion. It ended in an event, sudden, violent, and terrifyingly precise. And somehow, ZH's phone knew exactly where it was going before it got there. As experts continued to investigate the digital signature of the message, they uncovered something even more disturbing. According to signal pattern analysis, the transmission wasn't sent from a moving phone, but from one locked in place, unmoving, held tightly within a confined location, likely the cabin. But more importantly, it was accompanied by something unexpected, a brief, secondary pulse. This second signal, weaker and delayed by milliseconds, was identified as a low-frequency Bluetooth handshake. It suggested another nearby device, likely another phone, attempted to connect just before the primary message was sent. But this second device never completed the connection. That alone might mean nothing, unless you consider the possibility that two passengers were trying at the same time to reach someone, and only one succeeded. What happened to the second device? Why did its signal stop? The working theory is haunting. Either the user was stopped, or their phone was forcibly deactivated. And if someone was disabling devices, it means someone in that cabin knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't panic. This was control. Once decrypted, the message didn't just contain text, it also carried non-standard formatting. Embedded within the signal were structured data packets that resembled military-grade encryption, or at the very least, high-level obfuscation protocols. This wasn't something an ordinary user could create on their own, which led analysts to a stunning possibility. The message may not have been written for help. It may have been written to deliver data, metadata, trajectory readings, or telemetry to a receiver already waiting. Who that receiver was remains unknown. But deep web researchers who monitor unusual satellite relays discovered that, during the same window in which the message was sent, an unregistered satellite uplink was active in Antarctica, a cold, uninhabited zone used only for military research. What does this mean? Someone, or something, out there may have been waiting for that message. And that suggests this entire event wasn't a random disappearance, but part of a coordinated transmission. One message sent, one listener receiving, and the rest of the world left in the dark. Following the resurfacing of the decoded message, the response from global intelligence agencies was unusually swift. Almost overnight, all online discussions linking the transmission to military frequencies were taken down from forums. Analysts who were vocal about the encryption patterns reported receiving non-disclosure warnings. And in one case, a digital forensics lab in Singapore was mysteriously shut down due to a fire code violation, just 48 hours after publishing an initial analysis. The sudden silence was telling. Agencies that had long claimed MH370 was simply a tragedy of navigation were now actively scrubbing data, quietly, aggressively. Former intelligence officers, speaking anonymously, admitted that there had always been whispers of cargo on board that was not listed on the manifest. Sensitive hardware, prototypes, algorithms. Some now believe this passenger's message might not have been about the flight itself, but about the cargo and the consequences of its interception. Which raises a dangerous question. Was MH370 taken down to protect people or to protect secrets? Shortly after the message was authenticated, audio specialists attempted to reconstruct not just the text, but any ambient sound encoded in the data. These attempts yielded chilling results. Hidden in the final milliseconds of the transmission was a faint, distorted frequency, like a whisper buried under noise. After weeks of spectral analysis, researchers managed to extract a fragment. The voice was human, but trembling. One word was unmistakable: diverted. Then silence. That single utterance confirmed what the world had feared since day one, that the aircraft's path was deliberately altered by force, not accident. And someone on board tried to say so. The voice is believed to belong to ZH, the passenger whose identity remains unverified. But to this day, no family has come forward to claim him. No public records exist. It's almost as if he vanished the moment he spoke those words, not just from the plane, from history. For 10 years, the world has begged for answers. Families, investigators, entire nations, all searching the skies and the seas for closure. But what if the answer never sank beneath the ocean? What if it was sent, silently, desperately, from inside that cabin, not as a goodbye, but as a signal? Because now, we know one thing with terrifying clarity. Someone on board MH370 understood what was happening. They had just enough time, just enough knowledge, and just enough signal to say something the world wasn't meant to hear. A few broken words, a strange encryption, a location no one wanted to admit was real, and a message that wasn't a cry for help. It was a confirmation, a final, chilling whisper that this disappearance was never an accident. It was planned, precise, and protected. And that means something even more terrifying. If someone went to such lengths to make that plane vanish, if they silenced every voice on board but one, and if that one voice still managed to leave a trace, then maybe MH370 wasn't supposed to be found. Maybe we were never supposed to know, but now we do. And the question is, what happens next, when the world hears it too?